Welcome back to the Communication Mastery podcast with me, Marc. This is where we unleash the power of understanding to build bridges and not boxes, because we understand that communication is the oxygen of teamwork. We all need communication to thrive in life and work. And in this podcast, we want to increase your communication mastery so that we can all learn to adapt to one another and be effective in our communication. So thanks for being here. Let's learn together. Welcome back to the Communication Mastery podcast with me, Marc. This is where we unleash the power of understanding to build bridges and not boxes, because we understand that communication is the oxygen of teamwork. We all need communication to thrive in life and work. And in this podcast, we want to increase your communication mastery so that we can all learn to adapt to one another and be effective in our communication. So thanks for being here. Let's learn together. Well, welcome back. And this week I've got a guest with me, my great friend, Marc Tueni. We're both Marc, but I'm Marc with a K. He's Marc with a C. But it's good to have you with us, Marc, and glad to be talking to you on the podcast.
Thank you, Marc. I'm glad to be here.
Well, tell us a bit about you for the listeners, who you are, where you're from, what you do, bit of background.
All right. Yeah, I have a unique background. I'm first generation Lebanese. Mm-hmm. So my parents, when they came here to America, we had one cousin here. So it was a different of a learning curve for us as children. And growing up in the South, I was born in Winston-Salem, North Carolina.
Okay.
And so I've been a Carolina boy for a while. I did do a tour duty in New Jersey till I was 5 years old.
Okay.
And my dad, he was transferred back to the Carolinas. And so basically I lived most of my life in the Carolinas. Ended up, as career-wise, I got out of, when I left college, went to Coastal Carolina, which back then it was actually University of South Carolina.
Right. You're that old. Yeah.
Yeah. I was actually the last graduating class. Wow. Walking across the platform holding that diploma.
Right.
And then that was a marketing degree, business marketing, and then also tied with a recreational management degree of all things that I wasn't sure. I'm an outdoors guy too. So
Sure.
Marc, I didn't know if I wanted to be a park ranger or I wanted to go into marketing and sales. So I ended up going into marketing and sales, and that landed me a job with USA Today at the time. I was with them for almost a decade. I saw the writing on the wall a little bit, going into about the 10th year, how newspapers were going obsolete with the internet.
Right.
But the great thing about that was they really did a lot of training for us. So I learned a lot through that. And I'm also heavily involved with our church.
Sure.
And so what the church was able to teach me made me beneficial for USA Today, because the character and the integrity that was embedded in us to be able to want to learn to help somebody else achieve. And then at the same time, the church benefited from them teaching me leadership skills to help bring some order to often a messy environment at times when we try to do things.
Right.
If that makes any sense?
Yeah, totally. And that really underscores something we often hit on with the podcast, that it's always a two-way street.
Right.
and so I'm loving that combination of the church is teaching you stuff that you take to work, and work is teaching you stuff that you take to church.
That's right.
But there must be some adaptation needed in between those two. So talk to us a bit more about what you learned in that journey about adapting to different settings, different people, those kinds of things.
Sure. Yeah. Great questions. Well, the first thing is, when you're inside the culture of a church, it can quickly become an echo chamber if you're not careful, and you forget that there's a world outside of church.
Yeah.
And so I was heavily involved in ministry, so I was pretty encapsulated in that.
Okay.
So when I step out into the career world, which is the corporate America side, then you've got to deal with all the corporate America stuff, right? You're going to deal with a lot of the stuff you talk about on your podcast, how to communicate, communicate effectively, how to deal with people who are not easy to deal with.
Yeah, right.
And it seems like when you're younger in that generation, you're trying to get ahead. So somebody's willing to step on somebody to get ahead.
Okay, yeah.
So what the church was able to teach me in that was, what does it look like to be humble? Not to exalt myself, things like that, and allow what I feel spiritually were some very important spiritual laws that I saw actually come to life.
Right.
As I allowed them to manifest through this process you're talking about. And then also just the very fact that you can connect with people of all kinds.
Yeah.
And not be threatened at all or be biased towards it. If anything, it really opened my eyes up even more. How society really, I have so much faith in it, more than you may think, being in the corporate world.
Right.
Because I saw people who really cared for one another. I saw people who put their differences aside and actually tried it. And so it wasn't always, sometimes today, I think, there's a bad rap where you only focus on what is negative.
Totally. Yeah.
I don't know if I quietly answered. I don't know if I answered the
No,
question right.
I think that was very helpful, because I think that you put your finger on the fact that everything that you were doing was really contributing to the rest of what your life. So there's a wholeness. It's one of the things that I love to help clients focus on, is where does your piece fit in the puzzle of the picture, but you're actually putting the pieces together in your own life,
Right.
where the church is benefiting you at work, what you're learning at work is benefiting you in the church. One thing I did hear you say was that you got people who are different in the corporate world, but did you not find people who are different in the church world as well? Or was it that you mentioned an echo chamber? But
Yeah, that's worth discussing, because I was so heavily involved in the church that we actually, if we're not careful, sometimes being in the church, we'll start creating our own language and culture.
Right.
And so therefore it's almost like putting a square peg in a round hole if you're not careful, and you're not really able to see the people that you're with the way God sees them.
Okay. Yeah.
You can actually, if you're not careful, you can distort their view within your own eyes.
Yeah.
And I think being out there and doing both in the church, heavily involved in the church and heavily in the career world, was really good. It really was able to make those transitions and also applying things. What good is it to hear all these messages on Sunday to love your neighbor as yourself?
Right.
If you don't ever have a chance to apply it.
To do it on Monday.
Exactly. To do it on Monday.
Yeah.
And so no, that was some of the distinction. And it wasn't like I was better than anyone else. I didn't think that at all. It was just really a culture shift. Right. And there really are cultures that are developed around the church and around corporate America, and they don't always mesh well together if we have people who can't help the process, make the bridges.
Right.
Too much confirmation bias can be involved in some of this stuff. So, but I learned a lot. I mean, I was so thankful. The guy, also the general manager that was over me, great guy. His name was Jim. Absolutely love him. To this day, we stay in touch with each other. We formed a great group of people that will still on social media connect with each other from time to time. And Jim was an amazing manager and trainer. He cared about people, and he cared about developing people and he also took the mission of the company very serious. So he was probably in leadership my number one mentor. I mean, I did for 10 years. I sat underneath him and watched him, and he was over a huge part of the Southeast. And so they were raising me up to be a possible general manager in one of the Carolinas or something. So it was way more than technical. He had the ability to have relationship involved in that. Right. And so I can just, to this day, I'll joke around with my wife because we'll still use some of the buzzwords from leadership training and stuff that I learned from it. So yeah, it was a good experience.
Wow. I love that. American business wastes billions of dollars every year on miscommunication. If you're ready to change that trend, invest in communication IQ today, because it will give you a great return in terms of employee alignment, retention, customer engagement, profitability, sales outcomes. All of those areas will grow as you understand the science of communication. So go to my website at markburlinson.com, click on the business button, and let's have an introductory chat today about how I can help your business be more productive by enhancing communication. So talk to me a little bit about how Jim created connection with you. What were some of his values? What were some of his methods
Right.
to raise you up and
Sure.
to bring out the best in you?
Yeah. And like probably a lot of the podcasts of the past that you've done in teaching was a very honest and transparent person. He had a great sense of humor too. That always helped.
Yes.
But he also knew how to still be your friend, but be direct with you in your training.
Okay. Yeah.
He didn't pull back anything. He didn't get sympathetic on us.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he was able to still maintain company policy, building us to a place where we need to be able to be autonomous in leadership. So he doesn't have to constantly have to monitor us.
Right.
But yet he was very firm as well at the same time. And he would, if he had to confront, he did it in such a manner that when after he confronted you, you would say thank you, even though it may not have felt good.
That is a skill, isn't it?
Because that was that relational side. He wasn't sterile in a way of where it was just black and white.
Yeah.
This is the rule. You have to do it. He had a way to be able to bring you in. He also knew how to first tell you what was wrong, then come back and show you what was right. He didn't ever leave you leaving the office or somewhere feeling like you were just a failure.
Wow. That's beautiful.
Yeah. So it's definitely relationship driven
Right.
person. And it wasn't, I mean, and prior to that, I had worked in different places, but I don't think I've ever met a person that had that gifting that he had to bring a whole team together.
Right.
He made sure that the staff were taken care of.
Okay.
If I had to work during a season, a lot of times during the Carolinas, if we had hurricanes in Myrtle Beach or something,
Sure.
After knowing that, I had to make sure circulation, marketing, everything was still running. And he knew that some of those would be all-nighters. And afterwards, this would be an example. He would call me up and he says, I want you to take Lisa to Charleston and I want you to get a hotel for the weekend on USA Today.
Wow. Yeah.
And you take a break. You worked hard. You did well. We accomplished our goals.
Beautiful.
So he always had that relationship side of appreciation where you can almost, with the right leadership, I feel like it's not always about the paycheck.
Oh, right.
Maybe sometimes the paycheck of appreciation goes just as well as that monetary income.
Yeah, totally. It sounds like Jim was the sort of the poster child for the sort of stuff we talk about, where you actually leverage all of the different communication styles, the different needs that the different people have to draw the team together. He was
Absolutely.
I mean, just in what you're describing, in the way he treated you, I'm hearing the different languages being used, being direct, being clear, but also being empathetic, being relational first,
Yes.
caring, loving, but also being caring enough to be direct and be clear. That takes the skill of blending those communication styles together, and that's the fruit of his investment in you. So would you say that that was the main area that caused you to be somewhat like that? Because my observation is that you model those things now in the things that you do today. You're not with USA Today any longer, but I see you in not in daily life, but around the area and in the things that you do. How does that map out today?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think part of it is also one of the things that attracted me towards moving in the direction of sitting under Jim in the way that I did and wanted to honor him. There was something already in my DNA. Right. And so I think even when I was a child, I was the guy who I was bringing the neighborhood together, doing clubs, building forts in the woods. I mean, I joke around about it all the time, Mark, because I'm like, yeah, I think the Lord is already preparing me for a pastor, because I was creating clubs in the woods and getting dues from people to be a part of it. So, yeah, I think that makeup within us, and I think that's a very important thing, because what we teach, you and I, is a structure or something to help everyone. Doesn't matter who you are.
Right.
But then there's this other part of you that kicks in where it's part of your DNA. And so it's like, once you find it, it's easy for you to assimilate into it. It's easy for you to absorb it. It's something more you want, you crave it. And so for me, I think that was part of it. When I saw something that made sense to me and it resonated with me, I went after it. And so, that was a big part of learning that. And of course, one of the things that he was good at in transitioning what you're seeing in my daily life would be that paycheck of appreciation, caring for people, right. Enough that I think you realize, like, he would be very important to him about workload, paying attention to things. That's what that relationship side, nobody wants to work for somebody like a taskmaster that's got you going 70 hours a week and you never get a break and no appreciation. Right. You always just feel like you're being straws and you sucking the life out of you. He had a way to make sure he refilled you up. That's good. So that you're a part of it. And the other thing I really liked about what he taught, and USA Today was big at this too, when we have our leadership meetings. And this is something I feel as though could really help anyone. It's not driven by DNA or anything. It was how to create processes. And I see that. So the problem with me now, Mark, is if I go somewhere and I'm going into something, a restaurant, how they run the business or anything, that's the good side of me that hopefully comes in. The pastor side that goes, I'm not here to judge. That's the side. I see nothing, I hear nothing. But when I see things and problems manifesting, I know that the way to fix those are through process.
Right.
And it's not the process that's the problem. Usually the problem needs to be fixed through process. And when the problem is still not fully fixed, you just adjust the process.
Right.
Until you get to the place where you can finally resolve this conflict, this issue, or whatever it is you're trying to do. And he was very big on that. He would say, so what was your process on this? And then we would sit down and he'd go, maybe this is where you need to change in the process. So you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater and start over. You keep changing the process till you fine tune where you're trying to take the company or you're trying to bring the people to, or whatever you're trying to communicate.
American business wastes billions of dollars annually on miscommunication, but your business can be different. You can leverage the communication IQ system to give you greater collaboration, deeper understanding in your teamwork, more effective sales and customer service, as well as effective education for all of your team members. You can contact me through my website to find out how this could benefit your business. Just go to my website at marcburlinson.com. All the links to reach me are right there. And let's have a conversation about how communication IQ can take your business to the next level. Right. So I love what you said about this being in your DNA, because that's the expression of each person's uniqueness.
Right.
It's built into you the way that your profile would come out. I know we haven't done the communication profile with you, and rightly so, but it sounds to me like you and Jim had in common some of those key languages that I'm hearing you talk about, and that's partly why he was able to be so beneficial in your life. Yeah. I'm hearing the shaper language, which is the language that has the goal and works out the steps to the goal and has patience for that plan to be executed and to adjust it as we go, along with the influencer that's inclusive and enthusiastic and always wants to encourage and bring out the best. And certainly that would be what I would presume would be two strong languages for you, and it sounds like would be for Jim as well. But what I love is that I'm hearing a difference between the way you're expressing it and the way Jim did it. You're being you and he's being him. This doesn't define us or limit us. It actually opens out all kinds of potential for us. And that's a beautiful thing, I think. So talk to us a little bit about where you've been able to invest yourself in other people now and see them flourish in maybe in ways that are slightly different from you.
That's a great question. Again, going back to the DNA, one thing what you made me think about, even when I had Jim as my general manager, when you have something already embedded in you, that's that moment when the things that you know but you don't know come out.
Right.
Yes. That's what it is. It's like it's a recognizing of something you know, but he brought language to it. Yeah. But you didn't know you knew it till it came out.
You
was
need
already
somebody else to help you discover what's
right.
already in you. Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, I see that
Um,
again and again, and it's beautiful.
yeah. And so the question that you asked me was, how did it help
How have you been able to give away to others and help them
them?
become who they're meant to be?
Right.
Probably different from you,
Sure.
but you've done that, I'm sure.
Yeah. Now that's a hybrid, obviously, of the church
Sure.
and the work experience I had. I feel as though every person is the value. I look at everyone as the value of what God sees them as.
Hmm.
So if God thought it was important enough to send his only begotten son down for this world, he so loved it,
Right.
that if I am waking up to the true, now I don't know how, for me, if I'm being too spiritual, you can tell
fine.
me.
Yeah.
But
You're
for
a
me,
spiritual man. Be spiritual.
okay, awesome. I'll take the liberty. But if the nature of God is all, I'm awakening to it because he has got my DNA is in him. He's the one who created me, and I'm awakening to the true nature of that. Then I'm going to have him as a reflection in my heart, how I see things as I'm awakening more and more. It's more of a thing where you're taking more eyes off of yourself. To answer that question is, the more you take eyes off of yourself and all of your needs, all of a sudden you open a whole new world up to what other people need.
Yes.
And it becomes this thing that you're not trying. It's not a persona.
Right.
It is actually authentic.
Yes.
So that's how I can help people, is being as authentic as I can so they can come close to something that is safe.
Right.
And then a true friendship or a true dialogue can start.
Mm-hmm.
And Jim represented that as well. That trusting side where I can freely speak, whether a correction needs to happen, but it's because I care. Right. I have a relationship, or vice versa. Someone can speak into me as a leader and not feel threatened, and they still have job security. Right. So how do you help them? First of all, give them a safe space.
Yes.
Give them a place to be who they are. If you did the hiring right, if you did it in the beginning and you took the time to hire someone and you didn't try to make everybody look like you when you hire them, that would be the worst thing for an organization, right? Because there's no diversity. There's no ability to really draw off of everybody's creativity if they all look like me. So then therefore I'm responsible. Mm-hmm. I hired them. Mm-hmm. So I'm responsible to help them grow. And that's going to be honest communication, authentic. This may be a little bit analytical in thinking, but it's true. Mm-hmm. That's part of my responsibility. So how do I help them? I have to give them job security, letting them know that you're not going to get fired for just saying something wrong.
Right.
Yeah. I got to have that paycheck of appreciation and let them appreciate them. But then I have to be honest. Mm-hmm. I have to be authentic. And then they'll come to a place of where they feel safety, security, and then they begin to thrive. Mm-hmm. Because they don't have to keep checking in with me. They know if they make a mistake, we can talk about the mistake. We can change the process so that the mistake doesn't happen again.
I love that.
So helping people in that manner.
That's so, and it applies. I mean, obviously you've used that in the sort of the spiritual faith-based realm, but I think it applies universally.
Absolutely.
That everybody flourishes when they have a sense of safety.
Yes.
But they need those around them, not just above them, but around them as well, to be authentic.
Yes.
Because you can only become authentic when the people around you are authentic.
Absolutely.
If you're in a setting where it's where everyone's pretending, then you're going to pretend as well. And then we all lose.
That's right.
Because we need you to be you. And so your authenticity being presumably primary influencer shaper kind of languages is going to bring out of others the freedom and the authenticity to be something different in their communication styles and in the way they express their uniqueness.
Absolutely.
I love that you mentioned diversity and that you don't want to hire people like you. How do you approach the process of encouraging diversity and involving diverse people in any enterprise, whether it's in business or in the church?
Well, it's a continual education, first of all, what I truly believe. I can't sell something I don't own.
All right.
So step one for me is going back to the authenticity side of it. Step two would be training people, giving them the opportunity. What you're doing, and the reason why people will watch your podcast is there something in their DNA. The people that specifically watch you have something in their DNA because they're trying to achieve or move into an area where they can be more comprehensive to help in leadership because they have probably some responsibility of some sort. I find it interesting that it's hard sometimes to teach some of the people if they're not moving in a direction that you're teaching.
Yeah.
Because then it becomes knowledge, and that knowledge, when it's applied, just puffs up. But if it's knowledge with understanding, then they understand why 2 + 2 = 4, but they got to be moving in a direction in leadership. So when you're teaching leadership principles, they go, oh, I get that. I'm in a situation right now.
Right.
Now you're bringing understanding. If not, it's just knowledge and you become a talking head.
So you're getting understanding leading to application.
Absolutely.
Rather than knowledge for the sake of knowledge.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's hard to get understanding if you're not moving in a direction to apply it. Where how do you apply just knowledge? It just becomes a discussion over coffee. You know, it's an opinion. But when it's applicable, it really seats. It gets rooted, and then you go, oh man, yeah. And then now that knowledge comes and you're like, I know when to apply this because I'm facing this conflict or this problem I have to solve.
Right.
Or even more, it could be inspirational.
Mm-hmm.
It could be, you know what, these guys have worked so hard. It's not a problem. It's just, I'm going to take them all out to lunch.
Right. Yeah.
And so that dynamic of feeling the synergy of your group, knowing when they need to have encouragement and all that, it's actually the art of distinction.
Right.
You know, to be able to distinct your surroundings, what other people are thinking, how your team is doing. But when they really know you care, man, and it's not slimy. It's not like you're trying to make them. It's just the authenticity of you really care.
Right.
And it just comes out effortlessly.
That's good. That's great. So. Yeah. I love the adaptability that I'm hearing in what you're saying here, where it's not the same across the board. Your authenticity as you is then being applied to the authentic individuals within the team. So you're treating different ones differently to bring out the best in them, to bring out what they have, to fulfill their potential, if you like.
And that's what you were talking about in diversity earlier in the question.
Yes, sure.
That is what you're doing through being the authentic self, is also every individual is a different learner and requires a different way to learn. But if we don't see people and it's just, this is the way it's done, don't ask questions, go do it. They want to do right. But everyone hears differently.
Yes.
And when you get to know them and see them, you realize, oh, this is a visual learner. Right? This is an analytical thinker. Well, this one stays on the right side of the brain so much, they're so creative.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So your communication will begin to, and it's not about you trying to be a chameleon and make everybody work. It's about you caring about people enough to literally communicate in a way that you give them the right to succeed.
Yes.
I don't want to set people up for failure.
That's great.
And I think that is probably one of the hardest things for all of us in life, is to really communicate. Whether we're married, whether it's with friends, whether it's within the church or in business, the art of communication is an ongoing experience that I hopefully I'm going to continue to grow in.
Right. Yeah. It's like a tree that just keeps on growing and becoming more fruitful the more it grows, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
So you, in the answer you just gave us, I heard you kind of combining the emotive, the feeling for where everyone's at, each one in turn in their uniqueness, along with the cognitive of figuring out how they're wired or what they need or how you can encourage them or how you can draw out the best in them, along with the actual action of getting them to do stuff.
Right.
So you may not have even thought about this. If the question's too difficult, feel free to deflect it. But how do you experience that combination of the emotive and the cognitive and the kinetic, the action happening within you? Do you find that you're aware of it, or does it just kind of happen because of how you're wired? American business wastes billions of dollars every year on miscommunication. If you're ready to change that trend, invest in communication IQ today because it will give you a great return in terms of employee alignment, retention, customer engagement, profitability, sales outcomes. All of those areas will grow as you understand the science of communication. So go to my website at marcburlinson.com, click on the business button, and let's have an introductory chat today about how I can help your business be more productive by enhancing communication.
I think a lot of it is, what you begin to focus on, you begin to wire. So, you've heard the old thing that says what fires wires, right, in your brain.
Yes.
So if I go back, and both of us probably could go back far enough to be able to say, boy, that was some embarrassing moments in my life. I tried to be a leader. I did it out of more of knowledge than understanding. If I could go back and apologize to some people, right? So it's like you were saying, like a tree, it's ever learning,
Right.
coming into it. But at the end of the day, what is the big why for me is, why do I do what I do, period. And for me, I think I've gotten to a place where my wiring is so built in a way that I probably enjoy watching other people achieve in life. And I don't know, Mark, it could also be my age too. We're moving into an age where both you and I are at this fathering moment of our life, maybe. Once you move in from being that middle, maybe think of you go from a puppy to that Labrador Retriever that's all excited, he's young, and as they get older, they get quieter, more contemplated. And I think that's probably helpful where I am now. That helps with that question would be more of, okay, the complexity within me, I have to ask myself, why do I do what I do? What's the purpose of this? And then I don't know that I mean to do this, but I do a self-check. And that would be like, what's my motive?
Yeah.
Is this to fulfill my alter ego? Is this a shadow frequency I need to be aware of right now? Is this my persona? And if it doesn't come back to equal authenticity, I can easily step back from it and take my hands off.
Cool.
And I think that is a self-introspection of what you were saying. How do this complexity side, I think that's what I do, is I just take a step back. And again, that's also good to have a spiritual life that helps you remain in a state where you'll do your best. You can't call yourself a humble person. That never works.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
But there is a place of humility that you can choose to walk in so you can be understood and understand.
Yeah, that's good. I think that humility and authenticity often go hand in hand. And,
Right.
and I love that you've got that. You're illustrating for me a point that I often make on the podcast, which is that self-awareness is so vital.
Right.
And that application of self-awareness is really valuable, I think, in terms of the way we communicate with others. Every great marriage is built on connection. Can you imagine what it would be like if you had a marriage where every conversation brings you closer together rather than further apart? A marriage where what you say is actually understood and not misrepresented. It is possible to have a marriage like that. And if you'd like that, I invite you to go to my website and click on Communication IQ for Couples. Let's make a start today on your marriage embracing communication mastery. You mentioned fathering. And just in terms, I suppose, in terms of self-awareness, I know you have adult children, as I do. Talk to us a little bit. It's just to change direction slightly here, but talk to us a little bit about how your communication with your sons has changed as they've become adults.
Wow, that's a really good question. So when they were younger, obviously, we talked to them with more of a authoritative, like, this can hurt you. Don't do this. Don't do that.
Right.
You did a lot more protecting. And so as they get older, at some point, just as all of the stuff that we're talking about and teaching applies in my family. A lot of the leadership stuff I would bring home, and my wife would look at me and go, "You just came out of a leadership meeting at USA Today, didn't you?" And I would start to practice within my family. So yes, as they're getting older, I understood that I had to give them the ability to make autonomous decisions, but not fully autonomous yet.
Right.
And even today, even though I have a 22-year-old and a 24-year-old, it's still the same scenario. And what I mean by is this. If one of my sons now, they're both out of the house, we're empty nesters, but I'm not the guy that they call and then I go, well, watch out for this and do this and that. I'm still doing that thing. And they're like, no breathing room. Mm-hmm. So I'm more into tell me about how your day went. How's it going? When you're struggling with anything, it doesn't come out like that, but they know they have the freedom to share a grievance in their life. Mm-hmm. And what I felt is though for us, especially going into this empty nester, like something like a piece of your body has been cut off because for so long when they're under your roof, did you take the trash out? Did you cut the grass? I mean, it's this constant, right? And now there's this detachment happening. So I feel as I don't need to intervene unless it's going to really cause them harm.
That's a good point.
Yeah. So I'm dad, always there for them. But when I kick into that side of when I'm going to intervene, it's going to be, hey, listen, before you buy that house, would you be okay if I go over because I know construction? They know I do. And I really don't have to do this. They're already at a place where they would invite me into that. But if I feel like they missed it on that, I would say, hey, do you mind if I can come over and just double check that for you before you do that? There's things that you may not realize that we need to make sure that this is not landlocked. This is not an issue before you buy this. There's some things that you don't want to make them make really bad decisions that can really affect their life. So my communication with them is more on level friendship, but they know I'm dad, and I intervene when it's going to cost the most for them. Mm-hmm. If that makes sense.
Yeah. And I love those answers because earlier on you were talking about how a fathering attitude is the best way to bring the best out of people.
Absolutely.
And now you just demonstrated how fathering adapts as a biological father, where you're only intervening if it's going to be harmful, that you don't. At the same time, you're constantly available for them to begin to draw on you. And that adjustment, that adaptation, I think is a very healthy way of growing that communication dynamic.
I got a great story for you, an intimate one with my son, if you would like me to share.
Please do.
I think it even goes back to the original question, the complexity within myself of helping people in this. It takes it out of just more of a technical way of looking at it. But when my youngest son, he was getting ready to graduate from high school, probably in his junior year, I started asking him questions like, have you thought about, now his older brother had already joined the Coast Guard, and he was, the Coast Guard had him for 4 years. They were doing most of the fathering.
They did the fathering.
And I was like, so, what are you thinking? I'm not sure, Dad. I'm not sure. Well, what do you think maybe happened to him after when he got into his senior year? And I'm still coming around going, have you thought about anything yet? Right. And so now all of a sudden this tension showed up. So he legitimately is different than my other son, like we talked about earlier, right? And he is definitely a visual learner. And so I'm pressing him a little bit more. I'm like, you're going to be graduating in like 6 months. Any idea? Right. So this tension's starting to happen, and I'm not even meaning to make it happen. I don't even realize I'm helping create this tension instead of just taking my hands off. And this is where my faith would come in and say, okay, God, help him out. But instead I was trying to shape him kind of in my image and not knowing it. Mm. All right. And so then, because why? Because we're leaders. We're like, we want to see, we want to be able to see that you have some sight set to a goal.
Right.
because I know it helps me. It must help you.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
Whether you want it to or not.
right.
Yes. Right.
And it is helpful, but in different way, people receiving it and displaying it. But so he comes home, and then I started realizing something. There's this tension that you cannot really define, but it's in the air. And it's that conflict of when you're starting to communicate, and it's now square peg, round hole, even though you're trying to be meaningful now, you're even not even having anything seated in it. But it's too late. The lens got dirty and the filter's dirty.
Uh-huh.
Right. So the moment I would say, and this would be the example, if I came home from work. I said, how was your day today? What did you do today? What do you think he heard? Like,
Have you got a plan yet?
Yeah, exactly. So he would hear it and then and then I started noticing it in his justification.
Right.
Like he wasn't no longer authentic. He was trying to find explanations of why he didn't really have the day he would try and find the answers I was looking for.
Right.
So it wasn't authentic anymore. And so then that's where my faith had to kick in, and I realized, okay, it's gotten to a point where you can almost cut the tension.
Mm-hmm.
And I missed this intimacy I had with my son. We never really have a rub. Our family is very, very intimate. So when that rub comes, it's easy for us to experience it like sandpaper.
Right.
I was like, I don't like this feeling. I know he didn't like it, but it seemed like no matter what we did, no matter what I tried to fix it, it seemed like I just dug myself in a bigger hole. And I just had to pray. And I felt like in my heart, I wasn't supposed to say anything. Like,
wow,
just
right.
Leave it alone, drop it. And then I felt like when he woke up in the morning, I do something with my boys. They love to get their backs popped because I'm good at that. Right. I'll give them a bear hug. And then you can hear their backs just crack all the way up. And they're like, right. And then I'll kind of kiss them on the neck as a dad and go, I love you. And I stopped doing that. I didn't even realize the tension, I didn't do it every day, but we did it a lot. And I felt I needed to do it almost every day for a season. Yeah. And don't say anything about this future thing anymore. Well, to make this shorter version of this, one day after doing this and going through this process, finally, I felt as though I could just feel something had lifted because I stopped trying. I stopped trying to pull on that fishing line that's stuck on a rock and finally let the current just release it. I'm a fisherman. So. Right. And then he comes in one day after doing this for a while. And I have a recliner and we have a sunken living room. And he looked over the top of the banister and he says, Dad, are you okay? Yes, son, I'm fine. I'm absolutely fine. Are you okay? He goes, yeah. But in that moment, I knew he had just come home and realized this tension is gone.
Cool.
He could be himself and me ask him anymore, what are you going to do with your future?
Wow. That is amazing. And that so strengthens what we've already talked about of how do we help people be who they're meant to be rather than forcing them into what we want them to be.
Absolutely.
Just to take our hands off. And that really is what I would call high-level fathering, because actually low-level fathering wants to make sure everything turns out right.
Correct.
Because it reflects on me.
Yes.
But high-level fathering is giving you the space and the support to be who you're wanting to be, or who you may not even know what you want to be yet, right. But is giving you the space to become yourself. That's beautiful. Yeah. That powerful. Thank you. And that of course applies. It doesn't just apply to fathers. Mothers do the same.
That's right.
Can do the same. Bosses can do the same.
Absolutely.
Managers can do the same. Friends can do the same.
Yes.
And it's the level of I'm there for you in the way that you need me to be.
Right.
That brings that out, isn't it?
That's awesome.
Which is where these communication styles are so vital. And again, without realizing it, you've been describing so many of the different communication styles that we talk about on the podcast, just letting them come out in those different ways, even in the fact that your two sons are differently wired.
Absolutely.
And letting them be how they're wired to be is a beautiful thing. So that's wonderful. I love it.
Yeah, I could sum it up with that, what you said, because we can go all day with these things. I love it. The hedging that I would do early on when they were younger, it was more like, I would shape, or if my wife loves to garden, and we have trellis, right?
Yes.
And there's beautiful when roses and things be able to, they're free to do what they want, but you give them a little bit of structure, so they actually can get more sunlight and you're helping them. And I feel like that's probably a good analogy of even in helping people in business world. But then you could go to places that are theme parks and they got hedges shaped into characters,
Oh, yes.
right?
Yeah.
So now you got this extreme thing. You're actually creating your image in your head upon another living thing, which would be a plant. And you're telling this plant, you're going to look what I want you to look like. Right. And those are the two analogies. And I think as we get older, and our children get older, I'm more now along the lines of grow freely. And I will intervene when I can, but you still have the option to say, no, thank you.
Yes. Yeah. And that's vital, not just with our biological children, but with anybody that we are supporting or in relationship with, that we give them that freedom.
Absolutely.
To do that, isn't it? Yes. I know my wife and I have done similar things with our sons, just letting them be who they choose to be,
right,
and being there to support that.
Yeah.
And offer to that whatever. And I find all of my guys now come back to me with different questions about different things. Some of them about gardening, interestingly, but they're drawing what they want to from the relationship.
That's good.
Because they recognize what I have,
Yeah.
that they need or want. But I can also draw from them. I'll often go to them and ask them to help me with something. I've got one who's great with spreadsheets. I suck at spreadsheets. And so I'll go to him and say, hey, can you help me with this? And he's happy to, that kind of thing. And I love that collaborative approach that I think is so vital and so valuable. I also love that you drew out how different your sons are with their learning styles and things like that. That's one of the things that you, again, can get from the communication IQ profile. When you take the profile, the communication indicators have that built in, along with a whole bunch of other stuff, to help us understand each person's uniqueness.
Absolutely.
And I love that. But also you drew out the adaptability. The way you treat them at one stage is not the way you treat them at another stage. None of this boxes us in or limits us. It just gives us the insight and the understanding to be as beneficial as we can be in the moment.
So true.
So I love that.
And you can apply this into your workplace.
Totally. Yes.
You don't want to hedge people into funny characters.
No.
Right? You want to give them
because as soon as your back's turned, they're going to grow back into a bush.
Yes. Now you're trying to get weed killer. But,
yes.
I think, yes. So everything we're talking about today is applicable. And I feel like even for you, and the reason why you take time to do this is because if you truly feel a call to leadership, and we need good leadership, and especially in the U.S. like ever before. Yes. I mean, you go into places today and you're like, you really feel like, oh man, I wish I could help here and there. Not trying to be judgmental or critical constantly, but I do feel like we're at a place that we need to start raising people up. We need to start showing the character again of man in a good light. And I feel like as though that what leads us and what people are watching this is that if you're going to go into any type of management or leadership position, to not study human behavior or the how to connect with people, you're doing a great disservice. So what you're doing on this podcast really is important. I think in the generations that hopefully will watch this are moving into something they don't even know yet. Maybe they're in college and they're not experiencing what it's to be a manager yet. But then they find something like this and they're like, oh, I can apply that in this situation. It's vitally important. You can't just go into a place and just be all rules and regulations. And if you don't like it, off with your head. You're gonna be walking alone and look behind you and see no one following.
Right. Yeah. And that's a beautiful place to kind of sum up what we've talked about. Thank you.
Sure.
Because whenever you're ready to make a difference, we need you to make a difference. If you're listening to this right now, you can make a difference, and you're wired in a way that you can make a unique contribution. But let's make a start. Step up and let's begin to make a difference for the sake of community, but also to make a difference for the sake of our own uniqueness and fulfilling our potential. So give me a shout, contact me through my website. Let's make a beginning. Let's make a difference, because everything we've talked about today really hits home. And thank you, Marc, for your time and your wisdom and your insight. You've brought a lifetime of experience to the podcast, and we've benefited from it.
Yeah.
So thank you for who you are. Thank you for who you've become. And thank you for what you've passed on to all of us. It's been
Thank you.
great to have you with us.
I enjoyed it. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks a lot. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. It would mean a lot to me if you'd rate and review the podcast so it helps more listeners to find us. But also, would you give me your feedback on things you'd like to hear about in future episodes? And remember to share the episode with a friend if you see something that would benefit them as well. You can reach me with feedback through my website at marcburlinson.com. Just click on the contact button and send me a message. I respond to everyone personally, and I really want to hear from you. So thank you again for listening, sharing, reviewing, and giving me your feedback. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. It would mean a lot to me if you'd rate and review the podcast so it helps more listeners to find us. But also, would you give me your feedback on things you'd like to hear about in future episodes? And remember to share the episode with a friend if you see something that would benefit them as well. You can reach me with feedback through my website at marcburlinson.com. Just click on the contact button and send me a message. I respond to everyone personally, and I really want to hear from you. So thank you again for listening, sharing, reviewing, and giving me your feedback.